Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zach, and today I am driving a 2008 Mercedes R350. Up front is a 3.5 liter V6, and down below is a 7-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this R350 because this is my first ever drive in an R-Class Mercedes. These were made from the early 2000s to the early 2010s, 2004 to 2013, with one single generation, although there was a facelift. And this is just such an interesting vehicle. It's kind of a minivan, it's kind of a crossover, it's kind of an SUV, and so I am very, very excited to get into it here today. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel just like this R-Class, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. But let's get back to that 3.5 liter V6 under the hood, making around 268 horsepower. This is a very reliable engine in terms of a Mercedes or even just a German product. There are some timing chain issues that you might have to look out for, but once you address it, they're very, very solid and very reliable. Now, this car does have a platform mate or a sibling, if you want to call it, the Chrysler Pacifica from the early 2000s, of which I actually personally own. And here's a minivan version now. That's the new Pacifica. I'm talking about the old one. That also came with a 3.5 liter V6, but that is a completely different engine. That is a Chrysler engine. This is a Mercedes engine. So although they share a platform and they have the same displacement, completely different sides of completely different coins. I really like the power from the V6, and this was actually one of the least powerful options for the R-Class. You could get a V8 in the R63 AMG. If anyone has a V8 or R63 AMG Mercedes, if you would be interested in having it reviewed by me because those just sound insanely cool, you could submit it on my website. But long story short, it's a good engine. Like I said, paired to it is an automatic transmission. There were no manual options here for the R-Class, and so auto is what you got, and it's shifted on this little dinky thing. I hated when Mercedes did this, so I'm glad to see that it's, I think, mostly gone today. Last but not least, the R350 is a 4Matic, so it is all-wheel drive, something I wasn't totally expecting. With the minivan looks, I was kind of expecting front-wheel drive, and of course the earlier Pacificas were front-wheel drive as well, although you could find later ones with the 4-liter and all-wheel drive. So, interesting to see. How does it feel to drive the R350? Well, I think this is one of the big highlights. It drives actually really great. The power from the V6 is wonderful. Like I said, just a touch under 300 horsepower. And the dynamics of it just kind of feel like a big E-Class. It doesn't drive like a grumpy minivan, which I really expected it to do. And I think that's going to be one of the big attributes that we talk about throughout the rest of the video. But with that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have two main gauges and a screen. Off to the left, I have my speedometer and clock, and off to the right, I have my tachometer and fuel. And then, like I said, I get a couple of those readouts in the center. Really like that, sort of before the era of like actual screens in cars, but nice to see. On the steering wheel, on the left, we have page selectors, and off to the right, we have our volume and phone options. The overall steering wheel does look nice. It matches the rest of this tan interior, and I'm a decently big fan. Off to the left, we do have a climate control vent, of course our light switches, our parking brake release, and moving out of the door, we have power mirrors, power locks, and power windows. Down at the bottom of the door, we do get a tailgate release along with the Harman Kardon speakers. Very nice for 08. Moving into the center, we get two more climate vents and our infotainment system. So this does have navigation as well as media. That's why we call it infotainment, info and entertainment. And I've seen this in plenty of other Mercedes products of the era. Nothing really too new. We also do get a backup camera, although it is rather rudimentary. This is 10 years before the government required them. So this was a very nice luxury to have back in 08. Down below that, we do have our climate controls, dual zone climate, which is lovely to see here for 2008. Rear defrost, fan speed, pretty simple beyond that. I've always found it interesting that Mercedes actually does the temperature itself, and we do have rear adjustment, which is nice to see. Then we have our heated seats, ESP off, parking sensors on and off, hazard switch, and our CS button. Little cubby down below, as well as an openable ashtray with cigarette lighter. And then we have the cup holders. So we will do a big friggin' bottle test here in the R350, and I am happy to report that it does, in fact, pass the big friggin' bottle test. It's so interesting. Weird cars from the 2000s tend to pass. The Pontiac Aztek, pass. The Nissan Murano Cross Cabriolet, pass. And so now the R-Class joins in on the fun. Then we do have a center console that will open to show the hands-free Bluetooth phone. Very, very weird and very 2000s. This is like right as like the iPhone was coming onto the scene, so we didn't really have like smart phones yet, if that makes sense. So this is kind of that like weird middle ground of tech in the late 2000s. Now we got to talk about the seats. Like I said, they are heated, power, and very comfortable. They match the rest of this interior, which I really love as well. And overall, I've had a very comfortable and very pleasurable experience. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, 2 more rows actually. So let's go do some backseat reviews. All right, so we're in the back of the R350, and right off the bat, knee room great, headroom great. I'm 5'11", not a small guy, and I'm having no issues at all. Well, I have like emotional issues, but in the back of the R350, I don't have any complaints, so that's good. What I do have back here as well is I do have auto and off for the climate, as well as where to send it, high or low, but I also have aux inputs for headphones for listening to the radio. Now, I don't get any DVD players or anything like that. It's just for the audio, but very, very interesting to see that. Below that, we have 2 climate vents, pull-out, pop-out cup holders, very cool little mechanism down there, and then a 12-volt outlet, which a lot of car makers don't put in the back. We can also fold this down if you want like a little armrest or anything like that. But speaking of this rear area, we do have a 3rd row of seats. This is a 7-passenger vehicle, so let's hop into the very back of the R-Class. All right, I'm not even like properly back here yet. This is no place for a big man. Oh, lordy, lordy, lord. I don't think I'm gonna this is about as far back as I can get without it hitting my knees. This is where this is not very minivan-y. It does have a 3rd row. If you have children or amputees in your life, they're gonna love it, but I am neither of those, so I don't love it. Yeah, this is no good. It's interesting also how these seats fold up. The bottoms fold forward and then the backs fold flat. Kind of an interesting little quirk there. But let's hop out and talk about the trunk and cargo space. All right, around the back of the R350 4Matic, and we do have a button here on the key to open up the rear trunk. It does this beeping that's real annoying. But once we are back here, I did want to leave 1 seat up, 1 seat down, so you can kind of see a comparison between how much cargo space you get down with it up. Honestly, with the seats up, you get a fair amount of space, so I feel like they could have moved these seats back a little bit. Now, you can recline the seats, but that's not going to help my leg room at all, so leave it like that. We can come down here, offset handle, but we do have some storage down there, things like that, and we do have our medical equipment down there, some little storage cubbies over there and whatnot. Overall, decent space in the back of the R350. Like I said, I feel like they could have given the rear seats a little bit more room, but hey, I'm not a designer in the late 2000s over in Germany. You want to hear that beeping again? I'll push this big button for you. Lovely. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I've never like completely loved the look of the R350 or the R-Class in general. I think it does look kind of wonky. It's interesting to say the least. However, it is kind of iconic. It's one of those super weird cars from the mid-2000s that you just don't really see much of anymore. Anytime I see one of these in traffic, it's always a fun, exciting moment because, well, I don't see them in traffic all that much anymore. But with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think finally driving my first R-Class Mercedes here on the Shooting Cars YouTube channel? Well, I have to say I've enjoyed my time with the R350. I think it drives really nice, and that's its big touch point, is that the driving experience isn't like a minivan. It might look like a minivan, it might serve the purpose of a minivan, but I promise you that behind the wheel, it most certainly doesn't feel that way. Not to mention all materials in here, especially for 2008, obviously they feel dated now, but for 2008, really nice materials, wood grain, leather, mixed materials on the dashboard. I think this does all of that really, really well. And so this car kind of falls into maybe the right car, wrong time kind of argument or something of that sort. Because I think this is a good car. It just feels like it's being pulled in so many different directions. And that's not how Mercedes normally feels to me. Mercedes of the past in the 80s and 90s felt like there was a giant committee meeting and everyone was assigned a very specific task to make one perfect car. We saw this with the late 80s S-Class that I drove and absolutely loved, and I made that a talking point in that video. This feels like it was designed by 5 different committees with 10 different tasks to appease 30 different audiences. Well, let's try to get the minivan people on board, so we give it 3 rows, the low step-in so kids can get in and out easier, but then the exterior design says, no, we don't want to do sliding doors like a minivan, so let's do regular doors and make them giant. Look at how big these are. The owner, Kyle, says it's hard if you're parked next to a vehicle to fully open these doors, and I understand that complaint. But then the engine and dynamics company was like, oh, we got this V8 we could shove into it. We got this reliable 3.5 we could shove into it. Let's make this car drive and handle like the rest of our products. Okay, cool. So now you have the minivan team pulling away from the performance team, who's pulling away from the exterior team. It just feels like they were trying to accomplish too many different things. And in this era, the late 2000s, we had huge growing pains when it came to the SUV. Right now, today, here in 2024, the SUV market is pretty solid in what it is. Every company makes a few sizes of SUVs, they know how to make them, and that's fine. But back in the 2000s, we most certainly weren't that way. Take a look at the Pontiac Aztek. Sure, it's a big friggin' bottle passing alum, but also, it was weird. It was trying to be something it quite wasn't. The Murano Cross Cabriolet, like I said, again, it was a 2-door convertible SUV. Take a look at the Honda Cross Tour, a weird jacked up Accord with a tailgate. It didn't make sense. And so this is just another one of those vehicles that the SUV market and crossover market started to get so hot that all the companies started to respond. And some of them respond with fantastic vehicles. Some of them responded with this, a sort of mismatch of trying to please everyone. And in the end, you end up making no one happy. Well, except for a few owners. Honestly, Kyle, who owned this, loved this thing. And he's sad to be getting rid of it. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Kyle for letting me take out his R350, his R-Class. Kyle is one of the best automotive and just straight up regular photographers in the Midwest, hands down. Here is some of his work. He shot the GR Corolla that I had as a press vehicle last summer, and he actually photographed my best friend's wedding. So here are some nice pictures of me that he took. Absolutely wonderful. I have one of these framed in my house. Kyle's the best. Please go check out his information. It'll be linked down in the description below. He's one of the best, and he's awesome for owning an R350. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.